I'm going to go ahead and start recording just in case we say anything magical.
All these podcasts need a cold open.
Yeah, so
It's really cold.
we're definitely going to be breaking with our traditional organizational strategy of this podcast in several ways. You're the person we've interviewed. We're going to plan to do several interviews.
Yeah, I love how you're pretending like we actually had an organizational structure.
Yeah. So
sometimes it's best to just go off the dome, you know?
I can't believe I just got shamed into wearing it.
Yeah, it's a little wrinkly though, if I'm being honest.
It is a little wrinkly. Here, I'll just stretch it out so you see my chest hair through it.
Yes.
There you go.
Chest out.
Yeah. Yeah, big chest. Right. That's what we teach, right?
Chest up, shoulders back.
Chest
Pinch
up.
your shoulder blades together.
Make them bounce.
Jam on your erectors as hard as you can. Imagine your ribs exploding out in the wall in front of you.
That's something Bo would start this with too. Me doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'll be it. It'll be you puffing your chest out like this. That'll be the.
In today's episode of What's the Point podcast, we interview a friend of mine named Abe Al-Baba. He recently wrote a book called Fuel Your Performance, which he is offering to What's the Point listeners at 10% off until June 1st. You can find a copy or order a copy at www.3in1elite.com/FYPGPP and use coupon code GPP10. Again, that's elite.com/FYPGPP and use the coupon code GPP10. In this episode, we cover pretty much everything related to nutrition in terms of questions that we get on a frequently asked basis. We ask Abe why he wrote this book. We ask why the book begins with behavioral components. We talk about how shelter in place and COVID quarantine can be a good opportunity to self-evaluate. We talk about when to buy organic. We cover the questions our members submitted related to nutrition and how to manage intake around tournaments and training. All right, welcome to What's the Point, the podcast from Gamepoint Performance with your hosts, Chris Wicus and myself, Goose Helton. Today, we have a special guest with us, Abe. Abe Al-Baba works at the gym that I train in. And he has a company called 3-in-1 Elite. He's got a pretty elaborate background in this space. He's got his Bachelor's of Science in Kinesiology from University of North Carolina. He had an interdisciplinary study in health sciences. He's a Z-Health Neurosports Performance Specialist. He's a licensed primary sports nutritionalist. He's licensed with Precision Nutrition, exercise physiologist, certified health fitness specialist. The list kind of goes on and on. He lives and breathes this stuff, and he's recently written a book called Fuel Your Performance, which we're really excited to talk about today in conjunction with some of the things that we have going on here at Gamepoint Performance and things you have going on in your life, such as staying at home, social distancing measures, things of that nature. So we'll tie all of this stuff in. So Abe, if you wouldn't mind, I know I just hit some of the major points of your bio. Can you fill me in a little bit on what you do, maybe on a day-to-day basis or what your shtick is?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thanks for having me. Glad to be here. And I want to let your members know that Goose, he doesn't not work out. You know, I've seen him at my gym and he gets it in, and that's kind of what made this little thing click. He does some really good stuff and a lot of things blend. So good stuff. Keep promoting that. For me personally, how I got into this space is, through sports. I played football, wrestling, lacrosse. I did boxing and kickboxing. And through those, when I got to college, my older brothers were like, dude, don't do anything like one brother went and did like the corporate ladder route and hates, you know, the 9 to 5. The other brother did the film industry and followed his passion. So both their advices to me were find your passion. So when I got to college, I took anything I was interested in, and then I was dating a girl running track, and there was a major on kinesiology. I was like, what? There's a major on exercising? And this is back in like '06, so it wasn't as popular. So anyway, then ever since, you know, science was my weakest subject and all my life, and here I am. So, you know, freaking, I'm in neuroscience, like never would have thought in a million years. But here I am, and I just ever since, I'm just constantly learning. And honestly, the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know anything. So it's just endless, and that's kind of what put me on the path here. I'm in San Diego now, and I came here to learn from the best in the industries, and I've come across like some really, you know, smart people. So here I am, and you know, since I got into neuroscience, and that's really been key to unlocking clients, you know, full potential. It's been really wild to see some of the results, anything from between pain and performance. So excited to be here.
Yeah. So what sort of people do you work with? You know, full spectrum, athletes?
Yeah, I'd say about 40% are athletes, anywhere from high school to pro to the Olympic level. And then I got another 40% that's probably more your general population. And then I get another 20% of either chronic pain or very special cases like post-stroke, neurodegenerative diseases like brain AVM, things like that. But honestly, if you got a brain, I could work with you. We could do some stuff. So
that's great. All right. Well, I definitely want to spend a decent amount of time today talking about Fuel Your Performance, which is the name of your book. You know, talking to you off air, I know that this has been a project for you over the last 5 years or so. I have read the book cover to cover. This was a huge undertaking. And if you just slide to the back of the book and look at the references, it's very easy to tell that that's the case. Why'd you start writing this book to begin with?
Honestly, I think it all started with clients, you know, as you train, just like your members right now, right? They're constantly asking about nutrition questions. And I was an expert at the time, but I wanted to, you know, be help and do justice for them and get them some good information. So I just answer truthfully, like, hey, you know what? I don't know, but let me get back to you. And I'd do some research, and then I'd go through this crazy rabbit hole, the internet, and like misinformation. And it just like, it was really daunting. And there was just so much miseducation out there, or just confusing. So that's kind of what sparked my interest. I built a, you know, shopping list for, hey, I have hormonal issues, like what foods help boost X hormone. So then I like just kept building the shopping list, and like next thing I knew, I was like, screw it, like let me just like write a book. And I started diving deep into this, researching, like I make jokes, it's like 5,000 research articles, and only like probably 250 actually made the list on the book. That's how much stuff I had to sift through. And then I got to learn from a molecular physiologist at the time. He was a professor at USD, and he's been researching for 20 years how to effectively train an athlete. And now he's a molecular oncologist who literally has a say in what nutrition should be for cancer patients. He's actually on the forefront right now, talking back and forth with Dr. Fauci in finding answers for COVID-19. Very smart individual. So I learned from him. He sent me a ton of good research articles regarding nutrition, and I just kept hitting that. Then I worked with a naturopathic doctor and medicine chef who has over 600 cases of reversing cancer and disease in patients with just nutrition.
Wow.
So I used up her stuff, and I just kept learning. Then I was like, you know what? I need to make this official. Everything I've researched to that point, I have that neuroscience background, and I came across precision nutrition and saw that they really incorporate the brain and its role in all of this. So that's why I got precision nutrition certified. And then I wanted to apply everything to sports. So that's when I got my license. And yeah, man, it's just been lots of research. I read a ton of books, and just put that all together, because for me, what was most important was having that area where, you know, if I was, with all my knowledge of nutrition and exercising, if I was confused, imagine like the regular Joe, you know? So I wanted to provide my clients and athletes that source that's trusted, that's been tested, and, you know, that's something they could trust and, you know, refer back to with full confidence.
Right. I mean, reading this book, and, you know, got it right here. It's
Dang, is that a textbook?
exactly. We got over 300 pages of information in here.
Yes, but there's beautiful pictures, big words.
Here,
like it's not. Yeah, give them a little flip through. Yeah, see,
great
it's not
pictures.
as daunting.
Talk about body types.
Boom.
Actually,
very
have
important.
Recipes and whatnot towards the end of the book.
The yellow pages.
Yellow?
Yeah, color code the other way.
Oh, there you go.
My designer did a good job of color coding some stuff. Yeah, there you go. So we give them options at each meal. And I kind of did my due diligence. All those books that I read had a lot of good education, but not a lot of application, or vice versa, just like the answers without knowing why. So I thought that was really important to blend the two. I think if you understand why you're doing what you're doing, you're more inclined to actually apply it. And then for athletes in specific, especially for your market, we'll kind of go over those towards the end here. But I provided, you know, how to fuel before competition, how to fuel during competition, and how to fuel after competition, according to your sport, according to the intensity of that sport, whether it be high, medium, or low. And what the source is from the shopping list that I provide. I actually chose the most minimally processed foods at Trader Joe's. You don't have to shop there, but I thought it was good nationwide store that does a pretty good job. So I literally took pictures of this exact brand. So I really tried to make it easy for the reader. So hopefully you guys will enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, I really like the spectrum that you covered within the book. It starts with behavioral choices and understanding, you know, what your mindset needs to be. And I really want to delve into that. You move into energy systems, macronutrients, micronutrients, ways to identify where you should be sourcing your food, or where you should be sourcing your food from. Ideas around weight loss and gain, fueling your performance for specific outlets in sports, whether it's training, whether it's, you know, as you mentioned, before and after for fueling before and recovering. And then we even covered things like very specific diets and dietary restrictions and allergens. It's all in there. I do want to jump into the first section where the section 1 is, and you break this book into weeks so that, you know, people don't have to like just cram it all in all at once. They can read it day by day. There's literally day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And the first 2 weeks are all in this first section that address mental preparation and re-education. And what I really like about that is that you're front loading it with these behavioral components where, as you said, if you don't assess, you guess. Can you talk about why you started there?
So just how, like, when you first, you know, meet someone, right? You have an assessment and you ask them questions of why they're there. And a lot of people lose sight of that. I think we're very goal oriented as human beings. So I think it's very important to identify your goals and understand where you're at now. So we paint that picture, and visualization is really, it can be a very powerful tool. And then using those assessments, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. So We want to know how you're feeling right now. How are you recovering after your workouts? How's your soreness, your sluggishness? How's your energy from day to day? Are you crushing your workouts? What's your vertical jump like? What's your speed like? Your 20-yard, 40-yard dash? Whatever it is, I honestly don't care. I just want to make sure that you're getting better. So I thought starting off with those key questions, what is your motivation? Because and there's like a journal in the book, right, where you could literally write in it, or the ebook version, you can type it in. And it's really good to refer back to those when the tough gets, when the going gets tough, the tough gets going, right? So it's a good reference point to understand why you're here. So I think those are powerful motivators. And when it comes to behavior change and doing a diet, especially diet, it's just, everyone thinks sprint, not marathon. I do the 2-a-week rule to really successfully adopt a healthy habit change or any kind of behavior change. You got to go small steps forward versus one giant step forward and then you fall off. We've all had that, and then you're 10 steps back. So it's just adding small little things, whatever helps you and your unique lifestyle. And I address everyone as an individual, because we're all individual, we're all unique. That's why you'll find research that supports ketogenic diet. You'll find research that supports intermittent fasting, whatever. It's because we're all individual and we're all unique. So we all, react differently. It's just finding out what works for you, which is why I provided that assessment. So whether it's performance, physical, whether it's mental, whatever it is, we're going to cover it and make sure you're getting better.
Right. I think one of the common phrases we use here is N equals 0.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I was waiting for Chris. I was waiting for Chris to jump in there. Oh, you muted yourself. You really are going to be quiet this time. It's N equals 1. So, any individual just has to be treated on their individual basis. While we all have, some pretty common themes as all being humans, whether it's genetics or epigenetics, there's going to be quite a bit of variability between each of us. And the assessment approach is something that we fully support. We just started doing some nutrition consultations recently. Of all the consultations, it seems to be the one that we've been asked for the most leading up to offering consultations. And
yeah, they go hand in hand, training and nutrition.
That's exactly right. And we're right there with you. It's the behavioral aspects that have to get addressed immediately. Understand how you feel, and start to quantify and qualify either what you're experiencing or what you want to experience.
Yeah, I like that. Making it quantifiable. That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we could go a bunch of different directions
right.
from here, but I also want to make sure that we hit a lot of the Q&A that we're going to have toward the end. But let's kind of get there gradually. I know that a lot of times whenever people are asking about nutrition, there's this immediate association about like weight loss and gain. And that's not what it always needs to be about. Really, I mean, your book is about performance. So I don't want to get too sidetracked on weight loss or gain for most of this conversation. But one of the aspects I found about your book that was very compelling right now is this concept of NEAT, N-E-A-T, especially during this unusual shelter in place time period, quarantining, social distancing. And I think that NEAT could be very useful for people right now. Can you explain what NEAT is and why it matters?
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of go in depth about NEAT. NEAT is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. That's a mouthful. So we're all familiar with calories in versus calories out. That's our energy balance equation. But a lot of people don't realize how many factors affect each side of that equation. So calories in, it's which is like the food or the liquids that we consume, and that total. Now, what's very hard to determine is actually what you absorb, and that's actually what matters most. So it's your calories in, it's how much you eat minus what you actually absorb. And that's what's going to, be your total calories in. Now, on the calories out aspect, we have your RMR, which is your resting calories that you need to survive, like breathing, regulating your body temperature, and things like that, and digestion and thinking. Plus, we're going to take that RMR and then we're going to add your NEAT. And your NEAT is that non-purposeful exercise. Everything we do creates energy. Me, like doing this, that's creating energy. That's fidgeting. So we're going to throw that in the NEAT category. Walking, your day-to-day, work, job, all these things, cooking, cleaning, all that is your NEAT. And also those can add up to around 2,000 plus calories for the day, versus your 1 hour workout for the day is maybe 1,000 calories, maybe more, but really that's 1 hour of your 24-hour day. So it matters what else you're doing when it comes to gaining weight or losing weight. And then the other one is purposeful exercise, as well as mental drain, which is that's another tough one to determine. If you consume 100 calories, about 20 to 30 are going to your brain. So if you're thinking a lot, using your brain a lot, really creating some novelty and challenge through cognitive function, that can burn some calories as well. Then we have our thermic effect of food, which is you're dealing with calories that are spent digesting our food, and different macronutrients are going to burn differently. So protein, for instance, about 20 to 30% of those calories from protein are spent being digested. So those count as calories out. So it's understanding that equation and seeing where NEAT has a role in this. So gaining weight may be happening right now during this COVID quarantine that we're undergoing, because you're simply moving less throughout the whole day. So that's when 10,000 steps is very important, or something to like aim for, because most likely out of habit, you're eating the same amount of food, but not really allotting to, hey, I'm moving a lot less now. So people are going to gain weight because they're eating the same out of habit. Oh, it's breakfast time, I need to, eat my breakfast. Even though you're not actually hungry, because again, you're not moving as much. So very important to pay attention to NEAT, and make sure that is increased, or staying up to par to what your normal day pre quarantine.
Yeah.
And people should get into cooking nowadays. That's an energy burner, honestly, because you got to go to the grocery store, you got to get groceries, you got to come back, you got to unpack them, and then actually cooking. That's all burning calories, and then you got to clean too, and it's therapeutic for a lot of people. So good time to practice that during this quarantine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that immediately I noticed once it was time to stay home was, the number of times I would leave the house would obviously go down, which just meant that my overall exertion would go down. But our audience is mostly ultimate Frisbee players, and their exercise time has shifted drastically, not just because they can't go to the gym, but our Frisbee players are pretty addicted to playing Frisbee, and they're constantly playing in leagues and in pickup and things like that. And it all just stopped. It just ended abruptly. And it's tough. Like your other habits have also shifted, because maybe you're having to work from home. Maybe you don't even get to work. And so all of your routines are thrown off. This could cause some stress, and you just, eat to replace that. But the big thing is, I think what you're saying is, once our routines are disrupted, if we're not paying attention to our consumption, we might have an imbalance between what we're taking in and actually absorbing, and what we're burning, whereas we had established maybe an intuitive balance before.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's all out of routine too. So when our routine is completely thrown off, that's when mindfulness is super important. So I have for my weight loss section, I have a mindfulness fuel scan. And these are all the reasons to tap into your true hunger signals. Your best calorie counter is right here, assuming there's no other disruptions.
He was pointing to his brain.
Yes, brain, the noggin, in between the ears. So in the mindfulness fuel scan, I kind of teach you how and why people overeat. If are you eating in front of the TV? Are you distracted with social mediaing? That's gonna be kind of mindfulness eating, so you might overeat. Um, Things like certain foods that don't keep you full. Processed foods don't keep us full because of decreased fiber and other micronutrients. So again, you end up overeating. Eating fast. Just pure environment right now. A lot of people sad, lonely, or bored. So hey, I'm eating. I saw a meme the other day. It was like a message on the fridge, and it said, "You're not actually hungry. You're just bored." It said, close the effing door." So it's like, which is so true. So instead, maybe go for a walk. Maybe you need a little hug instead because you're feeling sad. Like, it's just tapping into these reasons why we eat and seeing if you truly are hungry. Maybe you're just thirsty. Maybe you're not hydrated. So kind of I give you tools around this like little spectrum to tap into why you're actually hungry, or when and why, or when you're not.
Chris, do you have any questions? I have some other ones that I really want to hit on as far as like food sources and whatnot. And then of course we've got a pretty long list of questions from our athletes.
Yeah, I guess just in terms of like the NEAT, are you just suggesting like steps, like a simple way to give people a little extra?
Steps are good. Cooking is good. But honestly, above all that, eating less and tapping in, using that mindfulness fuel scan to eat less, so you could tap into, hey, what are my actual calories that I actually need versus just out of routine? Do you actually need to eat breakfast? Maybe not nowadays. Maybe you need to skip breakfast. Maybe you need to skip lunch. Maybe it's a smaller lunch, bigger dinner, bigger lunch, smaller dinner, whatever it is. So yeah, aiming for 10,000 steps a day. Eating slowly will really help you eat less. When you eat slowly, you have about 20% of your digestion happens on the tongue via salivary amylase. So when you eat slowly, you could actually increase that absorption, and you're actually giving time for your gut and brain to communicate when you're actually full. Because I don't know if you heard that, it takes about 20-25 minutes for your brain to tell your gut when you're actually full. And that actually holds true. So when you eat slowly, you can actually learn when you're actually full, if that makes sense.
It's mindfulness too, right? Because if you just swallow food, you have literally no time to think about it. Don't ask me how I know that.
Right?
I'm probably the worst person when it comes to that. I remember reading something about like how you should chew your food, like mastication, like 20 bites or something like that, or more.
Yeah, 20 to 30.
I counted for like a week. I get to like 8.
Yeah.
If I'm lucky.
It's a very interesting little experiment. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you want to tap in, aim for 20 to 30 chews, waiting for the food to be liquefied before you swallow it. Another interesting thing that I hit home on weight loss is messy foods like tacos, burgers, pizza. A lot of people eat those fast just because it's like, there's all the ingredients like falling out. So you're just like want to shovel it and get it over with. So maybe avoiding those foods or again, just bringing the mindfulness to that so you don't overeat.
Yeah. And the other question I had one more question about NEAT. On the opposite end of things, if you're working with an athlete or just a normal person who's trying to gain weight, do you suggest that they limit their non-exercise activity, like get them to actually sit down and do things, or not walk around when they're on the phone, or limit like things like that?
Yeah, that could totally be useful. So we have this really crazy phenomenon called adaptive thermogenesis. So they took 16 people and they made them all overeat by 1,000 calories. I think the study was like for a couple of weeks. So in theory, these people should have all gained 16 pounds. But what happened is that I think one person gained half a pound, and the person that gained the most was 9 pounds. And what they found is that the people with higher NEAT outputs lost the least amount of weight, or gained the least amount of weight. So the reason is because as you overeat, if your brain and body are like got this excess energy, it's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, fidget, walk more, whatever. It's gonna think of ways for you to subconsciously increase your NEAT so you burn those calories. So yes, if you think about, if you are overeating on purpose to gain weight, then yes, again, noticing, hey, are you fidgeting? Are you pacing more? Whatever. Then if you decrease that, yes, that will help take away that energy expenditure, if you will. So you do actually gain weight. For gaining weight too, I really like liquids. Getting an extra smoothie in there, a pretty well balanced one, protein, carbs, and fat. Fat's a good one. Just drizzling like olive oil on your meal will easily add on some calories. I have a whole section of my top 10 foods and 5 additional meals you can add for gaining weight. But yeah, that's a very good point. And that's one way to do it. Could you eat faster, right? To get in more food. I don't like saying that one though, because then it creates a bad habit of eating fast.
Right.
So,
yeah, we used to force, we had a couple of, when I worked in collegiate athletics, we used to have like underweight pitchers that would come in, like lefties who just were good at throwing left-handed. So they got on the team, but they were like 120 pounds soaking wet and 6'1". So we had to just put weight on them. So I would just like force the kids to eat like peanut butter sandwiches as fast as they could. Like I would be like, order him a burrito and make him eat it before he left the weight room as fast as he could. Because otherwise he would eat it. He would like slowly, it was just painful to watch this kid eat. He would like eat like 3 bites of pizza and then forget. And then I was like, what happens when you go to Chipotle? He would tell me that he would just eat half of it and save it for later, but then forget and then throw it away. So I'm like, you're not coming even close.
Yeah, so that's actually a really good strategy on your end then. Have them eat faster. Shovel that thing down.
Yeah, liquids is great too. Liquids with like MCT oil or things that just have tons of calories.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's a little easier to digest and it just goes straight down.
Right. I don't want to upend our conversation by talking about gaining weight, because that's not what anyone's trying to do.
Yeah. Well, shout out to a famous Frisbee guy named Brett Madzuka, who chooses food 32 times every single bite. And it's impossible.
Wow.
It's impossible to have him eat a meal in under an hour. Every time we go out to eat somewhere with this guy, especially as a team, he's the first one in line, because if he's not, everyone will be waiting on him and we'll still be waiting on him. We've got to go through. There'll be 30 people behind him. We'll all get our food after him, and he's still not done whenever it's over. He's also one of those who's like 145 pounds and like 5'9". So he's he's got that high thermogenesis. He's constantly fidgeting and running around in circles. If there's like a bouncy house, he'll find his way in. That sort of person.
I like that.
That's all you need to describe a person like that. He's the type of guy that if there's a bouncy house, he's in it already.
I love that.
That's exactly right. Anything else on those lines, Chris, that you wanted to chat about?
I like the whole, I really like the book and the behavior components, and it's so in line with what we talk about, and just having, N=1 and understanding that everyone's an individual. And although ketogenesis and like a paleo type of diet might work for Goose, it's not necessarily going to work for me the same way. So we try to, like, with all these inputs that we put to try to change and adapt our bodies, we have to try to create safe to fail experiments and then actually assess if they're working or not. So I like everything that you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one more thing on the behavior change right now in quarantine, a lot of, I call it willpower versus environment. And your environment actually matters way more than willpower. So, if you have a bunch of chips and cookies and all these sweets in the house right now while quarantining, guess what you're going to be eating? especially when you're bored. So just take it out the house, get rid of the environment so you don't have to, you know, waste the willpower on just, oh, there's that cookie right there. You know, I shouldn't eat it, but then you know, so like just take it out the house, you know, easy way to do it.
I liked one of the quick tips you threw in there in the book, which was when you shop at the grocery store, stay on the edges. Don't go to the middle.
Yeah, the middle
why
gets
is
you
that?
in trouble.
What do they structure the grocery? Like all grocery stores seem to have the same structure. What's going on there?
Oh man, it's marketing, man. They must have did some experiment and found out like, okay, we're gonna put all the processed packaged stuff right there in the middle and have them go up and down those aisles and get all that crap food. So yeah, I'm sure there's a reason.
My guess is initially because wiring the gigantic grocery stores for electricity in the middle of them is harder than doing it on the outskirts. And that's where all the refrigerated cases are.
Okay,
I don't know. Okay. That's all conjecture, but that's what would make sense to me.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It's pragmatic.
Yeah. That's valid. Yeah.
Actually, somewhere along those lines, I wanted to touch on a couple of the tips that I thought were really meaningful, especially as I've continued to try to learn about when I should be buying organic and when it doesn't really matter. And kind of the story behind that. I think you touch on it pretty well in the book whenever you mention glyphosate, which is one of the main ingredients of Roundup, and how that's present in wheat more than most things, but it's present in almost all of our food these days. I was listening to a podcast not long ago, and they were discussing how they took a pretty wide spectrum of produce and also wheat. And this was always the case with wheat in every way that they checked it. But the highest like mineral or like you would almost say like nutrition source or vitamin or chemical compound that was in that food was glyphosate, more than all the things that were supposed to be in there. Carrots was an example. You know, carrots being buried in the soil, they're going to end up grabbing a lot more of the glyphosate, but it was more present in carrots than the vitamin A was, which carrots are notoriously rich in.
Right. They have carotene in that.
Yeah. So, I was curious, like, I definitely want to cover some of the specifics, like your fresh tips from day 21 to be really specific. But also just like, what's the situation we're in with this glyphosate thing and other toxins, herbicides and pesticides?
Yeah. So I have a whole section called, the fresh tips and GMOs. So we all heard of GMOs, genetically modified organisms. It was created, I think, by one of 4 companies. One of them was Monsanto. That's the one everyone knows. Yeah. They're a biotech company that created this genetically modified organism by blending everything from different animals to human stuff to viruses to bacteria, whatever, to create this seed. So in that seed, what they do is, so you've got pesticides, which are sprayed on our crops, and it's sprayed a lot on those GMO seeds to help keep away the bugs and the weeds and things like that. Now, what's really cool to see evolution, happen. As they kept spraying like ridiculous amounts, super bugs and super insects actually evolved. So now they had to create, so using Roundup, they have this glyphosate, which is a registered pesticide, and is probably, quote, a human carcinogen labeled by the World Health Organization, which is like freaking wild. And what happens is with that glyphosate, which is on 70 different food crops, including your grains, spinach, avocados, almonds, walnuts, figs, plums, grapes, kiwi, lemon, like it's literally on everything. Yeah. And over time, if you keep eating these conventional foods or foods that aren't organic, it can overwork your kidneys and liver as they're continuously trying to remove these chemicals that are in the pesticide. I think in 2018, a school groundskeeper, like the guy that takes care of the fields and stuff like that, claimed that his deadly lymphoma cancer happened from his glyphosate exposure. and he actually sued Monsanto and won $289 million on this lawsuit. And actually, it changed the rules for schools nationwide. I know California is huge on it and not allowing Roundup on their fields. And within that same week, they ran a EWG, which is Environmental Working Group. Great source if you're ever wondering, like GMO stuff and anything relating to food. They ran a sample on 45 common cereals and snacks and oats, things like that. And they measured the glyphosate on these crops, and 75% of them had higher than what is considered acceptable and safe rates of glyphosate. Now the issue, okay, this pesticide has been linked to autism, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, serious food allergies, including celiac disease, Parkinson's, MS, anxiety, depression, Alzheimer's, obesity, reproductive issues, and liver problems. They even cause issues within our gut, disrupting our endocrine system, which controls like all of our hormones. They also have deficiencies within those vitamins, minerals, and amino acids. So not good.
Yeah.
So this is why it's very important to get foods that are organic. And as you mentioned, what foods do you need to get organic? So I have a list. I'm sure people have learned about like the Dirty Dozen. I looked that up. They're like always adding to that list and taking away from that list. So take this with a grain of salt, but I think it hits home for the most part. So anything ending in berry, you want to get organic. Cherries, so that includes blueberries, raspberries, strawberries. Get cherries, grapes, grapefruit, figs, kiwis, lemons, any melon, pears, plums, things of that nature. And then for the veggies, you want to make sure your spinach, your lettuce, your bell peppers, tomatoes, especially your oats, especially grains, potatoes, all are purchased organic. Almonds, walnuts for the fats, avocados, and pistachios. Now, your least contaminated is going to be your bananas, your cantaloupes, your mangoes, pineapples, onions, asparagus, broccoli, eggplants, things of that nature. Your sweet corn and sweet peas, it seems like frozen is actually a better option for those. So those are reasons, and it's funny that in 2017 they did a test on organic versus conventional foods, and what they found is that the organic foods had higher amounts of antioxidants and lower amounts of metal, literally metal, and obviously the pesticides, because that's what organic is. It's pesticide free. And then as far as the meats and dairy, the foods had higher omega-3 fatty acids in the organic food than the conventional stuff. And omega-3s, that's our anti-inflammatories. So to recover after your exercises, when you're training hard, you're increasing inflammation. So to decrease that or help recover from that, you're going to need a good amount of omega-3. So I think the average American that eats processed food has we have omega-6s, which is pro-inflammatory, and we got our omega-3s. Average American diet is anywhere from a 20-to-1 ratio or 50-to-1 ratio, comparing 6 to 3s. What you want to have is more of a 2-to-1 ratio, or even you could get away with like 8-to-1. Because what happens is your omega-6s crowd out your omega-3s. So essentially it's all pro-inflammatory. Yeah. So another good reason to go organic.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know a lot of times people just swallow the fish oil pills, hoping that that's gonna do the trick.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
there's a lot of mixed.
Thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of mixed research about whether or not that actually intervenes a ton. When the simple matter of the fact is, like, nature had it right from the beginning, and go back to like the grass-fed sort of oriented or organic, non-pesticide produce. The more we're going to accumulate those things that we need. It's weird. It's like nature sorted this out long before we messed it up, and then tried to come back and figure out where we went wrong.
Yeah, as I was researching, I list the top 10 supplements, and really realized that, like, if you take one supplement, they all have their time and place to take, but like you said, like nature had the right plan that, one, if you get one micronutrient, so like your vitamins, your minerals, if you get too much of it, it actually may disrupt the absorption of another.
Right.
So it's funny, like different cultures, like we have, salads, and we add lemon and, to our spinach with avocado and whatnot. And it's funny, when those two are linked, you have more vitamin A or omega-3 or whatever. So it's very interesting when it comes to that, aspect. So that's why I really preach whole, minimally processed foods. That's what it all comes down to.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've also heard, and it was kind of referenced in your book as well, is just as a general tip for deciding when to go organic, if there's like a really thin skin on it, or like a thin rind, or even most things with a rind, you need to go organic on it. Whereas some of the other things, you may be able to like just go ahead and save your money because it's not going to make that big of a difference.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Yeah. For the longest time, I wasn't really concerned about this whole glyphosate issue. And then more and more research kept coming out. I mean, Europe's standards are completely different than ours. We allow
oh my God,
like
it blows my mind.
Yeah, something like, I don't know, like 10 times the amount that they do.
Yeah. They're like different dyes. Okay, for instance, real quick, very interesting. Mellow Yellow, okay, a soda. What gives it that yellow color is different dyes that they add as a food additive. Now those dyes are literally pulled from, I believe this one is like petroleum, coal, and tar to create that color. And literally in Europe, because they don't allow these food additives, Mellow Yellow had to figure out, okay, how else can I create the color yellow? Well, they took beta carotene from carrots and it created the yellow color for them. I don't know how, I'm not a chemist, but it just blows my mind because they figured out a way healthier way, but still haven't went that route. And the answer is money.
Money.
All right. You want to find the answers, money. It's cheaper ingredients, and it's ingredients that get you addicted to their product that doesn't keep you full. So you keep buying it.
That's right.
It's sad. It's freaking sad.
Yeah. I mean, you also touch on environmental concerns, those people who like pay attention to that stuff, whether it's because, they pay a lot of attention and their behaviors change insofar as they become vegetarian or vegan. Like, to me, the more resounding answer has seemingly just been like going with small farm mindset for everything, regenerative farming. Animals need to poop for us to have good topsoil, for us to grow nutrient-rich foods. And so it's like, if you go full vegetarian because you don't want there to be, too much methane in the air from cows farting or whatever the story is these days. The real answer is like, we need cows and sheep pooping all over the place, not in like these industrial, like small confines, so that we can have topsoil. I've actually heard also an interesting proposition from some of the environmental agencies that instead of forests being the most needed resource for taking carbon out of the air, it's just topsoil. And if we were to stop industrial farming now, in 5 years, we would almost have reversed all of the effects that we have of having too much carbon.
I have not heard that one, but I believe it.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
I believe it. I go over where to get your food and the preferential order, and it's 7 different ways. Number 1 is pick from your garden and consume that same day. That's like the healthiest way. That's the best way to preserve all the nutrients. Not to say from there it all goes downhill, but it's just something to think about. And then the second one is purchase from a local farmer, picked up from a CSA, which is your community supported agriculture. And that's your farmers market. So support local, and you're going to get, better nutrients that way. Just because something is not labeled organic doesn't mean it's, not your local farmer that's literally right there with the cows, and they're all pasture raised and things like that. Doesn't mean that it's not going to be as healthy.
Right.
Number 3 will be from that purchase from a fresh from a store, that gets it from a regional farmer. Pick that week, but good luck on the grocer actually telling you if it actually was picked that week.
Right.
Then number 5 is just your local grocery store that probably got their product across the country. That's why I did choose Trader Joe's, though, because they kind of try to get regional farmers, and they pick foods that are in season,
Right.
which again will affect your nutrients. Then the last one is 2 more: purchase fresh from overseas, and then canned is your last source.
Yeah.
And then frozen foods. A lot of people ask me about that, frozen versus fresh. Fresh is always probably the better route, but sometimes you don't know how long it's been sitting on that shelf. So when it's frozen, it's actually preserved at its highest peak. So a lot of the time you actually get, healthier, more higher nutrients when it's frozen. So
nice. Yeah, I have a farmer friend, also a Frisbee player, Jonathan Nethercutt, and his advice to me for years has been, it doesn't matter what you eat as long as you're eating whole foods, and the goal is to eat things that are in season and local.
Yeah.
Your body kind of figures out what it needs. In the summer, you're going to have those things be harvested that are, high in water content, because you need the water during the summer. And there are like tons of instances like that where things may be higher in vitamin D during the winter when you don't get as much sunlight and you need them. But I think those are really simple guidelines, and I really liked that list of 7 that you just went over, because I don't know that oftentimes people think about stack ranking the source from which they're getting their food.
So I got that from Dr. Terry Walls, who literally reversed all her symptoms of MS through just nutrition. And she went through the whole rabbit hole that I went. She saved me, time on researching other things, but she had that in her workbook, and I really loved it, and it just lines right up.
Nice. All right. Well, I think it's probably time to start knocking off some of these Q&As. We've got a pretty wide spectrum of questions. Some of them are going to be oriented around, day of tournament performance or night before. Some of them are going to be slightly bigger picture things like intermittent fasting. So we'll try to hit on all of them. I don't know if do we want to start a 60-second timer and just see how it goes, Chris? Like, what are your thoughts here?
Maybe.
I have a feeling, just based on listening to Abe talk and talking to him, that he could probably go on for an hour on any one of these questions. So maybe
5 years, Chris.
Maybe we give him 2 minutes, 120 seconds.
Okay. I tell you what.
You can do a minute.
I'm going to do a minute. I'll do a minute, and I'll give you like a little beep or something, just so you know.
Clapping.
Yeah. Clap and a bark. Whenever we reach a minute, and there's no penalty for going over, but then you'll have at least some idea where you're at.
And we'll shame you every time you go over.
Negative points.
Yes.
All right. So let me get this whole thing started. All right. 1 minute. Okay. So one of the first questions that we have, and you don't really have to go too far into the full like science behind this, is going to be, what are the best and worst foods to eat during a game? So let me just set the stage here. And like, Abe has played Ultimate. He never played in like a super competitive environment.
You guys see this? I think it's this side. Can you see the scar?
There, right above your eye.
Yes. So out of all those sports I named, my high school started an Ultimate Frisbee club, and we were like second in the nation. And I played a game with them. And as I scored, I caught the V and ran straight into a metal pole.
Oh, no.
15 stitches. Good times.
Oh
I love
my
Ultimate.
gosh.
It's a great sport. But
One
anyway,
of the best players in the planet, her name is Georgia Bosher. She did the same thing at a summer camp that I go to called Cut Camp.
How does that happen?
Yeah, it was just like the corner of a soccer goal.
Was it a field goal? Oh,
To the end
soccer
zone.
goal.
Yeah, busted it open.
Mine was a
she looks tough now.
yeah. Mine was a 4-man sled from football that didn't have the padding on it anymore. And I even before the game, I was like, "Hey, should we move that?" Nah, it'll be fine. Here we are.
Here we are. All right. So Abe does understand the game of Ultimate and how it's a stop and go sport, like a lot of other things. But it's not just stop and go. It's a little bit more on the end of like soccer and in tournament format. We've talked about that in the past. So the basic question is just like, what's the best and worst foods to eat during a game? And I'm going to give you a timer to start now.
All right, best, and it depends on the intensity because each game is going to be different. But number one, foods that you already know that you tolerate well. During a game is not the time to experiment with new foods. Fast-acting carbs are best, like raisins, honey, watermelon, to give you that burst of energy that you need now. I'd say liquids are even better because of it being easy on the digestive system. So something going to like simply orange juice or coconut water. Those are the better foods. Worst, heavy foods like a full meal, obviously. Don't do that. Your complex carbs, your pastas, your grains, things like that. High fiber foods and fatty foods. So no potatoes, broccoli, apple, even high protein, like don't have a steak, almonds, beans, carrots. Boom. How'd I do?
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. Really just nailed it. Perfect timing.
So all those years of me eating a T-bone steak during games was not a good idea.
Yeah. Nah. Probably a little too much acidity buildup for that.
All right. Crush that one.
Okay, though.
Let's see. We also said, we have a very similar question. It said, what food should you avoid eating the Saturday evening of a tournament and why? So again, just as a refresher, with Frisbee, most of it's played in tournament format where we play 4 games on Saturday and maybe 3 or 4 games on Sunday. So we're talking about, middle of the tournament before we're going to sleep and trying to recover to be able to play the next day. So what should we eat on Saturday evening at a tournament and why?
Okay, so I actually have a section I talked about pre-competition, and I actually give you scenarios, and one of them is an all-day tournament, and I give you a snapshot of how to eat the day before and on the day of. So again, not the time to adventure with foods you're not familiar with. Overeating protein is probably not going to be best because most likely you're tapering, meaning like you're not exercising and training as hard because you're resting and recovering for your tournament. So you won't need as much recovery, which is what protein is kind of going to give us. So eating loads of meat will not be necessary and will add acidity, okay? And if we want to get into pH balance and things like that, if you overeat the meat, it actually might increase your, or actually decrease your onset to lactic acid. So that point where you get tired. So you want to aim for carbs, aim for, our body's obsessed with balance. We like some acidic foods, we like some that aren't. So you want to get right in neutral. Okay, 1 minute warning. We're almost there actually. So stay away from the processed fried foods. Those are your, more acidic foods. For a tournament, carbs from potatoes, quinoa, wild rice with veggies and fruit. And, still want some meat, just don't overload on it. I provide like a spaghetti recipe that has a, better sourced brown rice, a quinoa pasta, and then we're adding some veggies to it with peas, carrots, onions, mushrooms, as well as your meat source. Whew.
Nice. All right. We've got this is a very specific question, but I feel like it's one that will be echoed across the Ultimate Frisbee community. I saw some great suggestions in your book to this very thing, like breaks in between games. So if there's a bye during the tournament, so, you know, we've got 4 games, you play a game, you take a round off, and then you've got a couple more games. Should we be eating any differently than if we're eating during halftime or in between points during a game? And then if so, how does this change? Or does it change for if you have 30 minutes, an hour, or 2 hours? So a little bit more complicated of a question.
No, I love it. I love it. Dang, I wish I knew the answer to this when I played lacrosse in high school, because it was very much tournament style, like Ultimate Frisbee. Okay, nutrient timing, very key. And again, we're all individuals, so it all depends on your metabolism. You're more of an expert than I am on your body. So figure out, you know, stay with foods that you tolerate well. And most importantly, listen to your brain's request for fuel. So in 30 minutes, maybe you don't need any fuel, but maybe you do. You know, maybe you had a more intense game than the other one. So the shorter the break, liquids are best, like our OJ coconut water. Gatorade, I do and don't like, but we'll say okay for now. Or fast acting carbs, think again that honey, the raisins, the watermelon. For 1 hour, you can get more into carbs that have a bit more fiber. So your oranges, bananas, maybe a bit of fat, nut butters, or a smoothie. Almost there. 2 hours. 2 hours, you can incorporate your carb plus fat mix with some protein now, because now you need to recover from the bout. So banana, nut butter, apple, nut butter, Trek mix, a bar. I have a yogurt recipe with jerky. Soups and liquids are good right now during that time, because it's, again, easier to digest. And if you're a sweater, definitely need to replenish some electrolytes.
Yeah, that's big for me. I used to have a lot of cramping issues because I just like sweat them all out.
Yeah, I remember.
So tournaments seem to be doing a good job here, because tournament staples seem to be, you know, having some bread on hand, but oftentimes they've got bananas and oranges, maybe some peanut butter.
That's great.
So these are pretty good resources, it sounds like, to have.
Yeah, and maybe it's the quantity too. Maybe you eat 3 bites of your apple versus the whole thing, or half a banana. Like, you know, listen to your body.
We had Elaine, one of our coaches asked a very specific question from each one of us about like what our go-to snacks are for, like, Abe, what was your go-to snack for lacrosse tournaments? Or what would it be now?
Oranges. We had it right, dude. We got oranges at halftime. That's actually a good source. What I would switch to now, knowing what I know, oranges have a little bit higher fiber, which might mess with some people. Honey, like those honey sticks, boom, little shot. That's probably the best.
Goose, what's your go-to for long workouts or tournaments?
I mean, I do love eating cuties. Those little oranges.
Oh yeah. That's fine.
Yeah. I could down those all day. They're delicious.
In college, we had our coach was big on honey. He's a genius. Cat Wilson, he's a genius. But
nice.
We actually had, I reached out to like 50 honey farmers when I was on my team, and we got sponsored by a small honey farm in New Mexico.
Yes.
To answer the question, I ate a lot of honey and drank pickle juice.
Yeah, pickle juice for the recovery.
Electrolyte pills and pickle juice changed my athletic development, or my ability.
For those watching on video, I've been using these from Hammer for a long time. Ever since I discovered these, maybe like 5 years ago, all of my like systematic cramping issues have been contained. Like I'd have muscles that weren't really at play cramping. So of course your like calves were going to cramp and stuff, but then like I would yawn and this would cramp, or like my lat would cramp. Or something like that. So it's like, wow, this is clearly nutritional. Either that or like I've really been using this lat.
Right.
Or it's just you're just compressed. You're just concentrically oriented.
Yeah, that's But when I take the electrolyte pills, all those symptoms go away.
Pickle juice is way cheaper.
Just so
everyone knows.
Maybe.
Or maybe some nut butter. Yeah,
I don't know.
You can tell me that the Endurolite pills are cheaper than pickle juice?
I got a pro deal, man. Pro deal.
He's pro, bro.
You gonna throw your promo code up on the podcast?
Maybe I'll start slinging some Endurolite.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm one of those who will eat like little bars and stuff during tournament play, just because I need something that will not sour out in the heat or whatever. But a lot of times my team will go to the grocery store day 1 and day 2, and we'll go get some fresh bananas or blueberries or just some fruit that we can down. Will be a little bit of a healthier choice. We get some beef jerky sometimes, but don't eat a ton of that.
I just wanted to have one more thing. Just speaking again to like the individualization and why the rules aren't always the rules for everybody. There are certain tournaments and like workouts and stuff that I would do where I would literally just eat a meal while I was doing it, which is like a no for a lot of people, and it usually makes them lethargic. But I can literally eat a sandwich and play a game and play really well. I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
but that's
truth be told, I'm somewhat similar. I don't know like during, but I'm like I could eat like 30 minutes right before and just no problem.
I can literally like run a sprint set, like run a point, eat half,
and then like peanut butter jelly sandwich, right?
Yeah, totally.
Like your rest period is eating.
Yeah, I used to like finish eating what I was eating as I was walking onto the field.
Wow,
like sandwich.
That's pretty ballsy. I couldn't do that.
I don't know.
I mean, that sounds like you have a good balance between your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, right? Like,
sure, let's call it
that. people get amped up on their sympathetic nervous system when they play, and there are so many people who just can't eat. They can't even like think about eating.
Yeah,
some of my best performances, I think, were when I was drinking a beer.
Oh no!
Right,
we're not going there.
I have a section on alcohol and performance.
Yeah. It doesn't speak of alcohol in glowing terms.
Right. By no means am I saying drink while you play sports. But we're talking about autonomics. If I can shift myself more parasympathetic, maybe that's for the better.
Yeah. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this either. It could just be 1 minute. But we did have a question, and I think it was echoed by somebody else. What are your thoughts about eating a plant-based protein versus meat-based protein diet?
Oh, I'll try to speed this one up.
This one's tough. Yeah.
Good question. Okay, this is a huge hype right now. Something to take in consideration are the sources of the animal-based proteins. As I mentioned, organic grass-fed, you're going to get more omega-3s, as well as other nutrients that you need to thrive. This is all based on individual preference and body, honestly. It's about really getting the appropriate amount of protein intake by the end of the day. For athletes, I like to start them out at 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight. But if you eat your veggies and other plant-based protein foods and eat your animal-based proteins, this will most likely get you to that adequate, point. But if you only eat veggies or a plant-based diet, then you most likely have to supplement. And I like the pea protein supplement best. Overall, though, just get good sourced animal-based protein. Plant-based sources, some good ones are quinoa, peas, tofu, tempeh, beans. Going fully plant-based, that could cause other issues because you might get too much fiber, which can disrupt thyroid and hormonal balances. And iron seems to be much more absorbable from animals, which helps with transfer energy into the lungs and things like that with hemoglobin. So preference, but just make sure you're getting a total amount by the end of the day.
Yeah, nice, good answer. I think one of the concerns that people, especially with that documentary that came out, was they're just trying to squeeze everything in they can.
Oh, it's a game changers.
Yeah, game changers, exactly.
What I really like, it was actually a well done documentary. It's what I really liked is they kept relating it back to performance.
Yeah.
But again, we are all individual. So honestly, just having the stress, they don't talk about the stress of having such a restricted diet. As a past vegan for a year and a half, someone who's experimented with that, you know, that was hard. Like, they don't talk about, you know, when you go to any gathering, like, you got to isolate. You go to any restaurant, like, now we're in California, there's more choices, but it's still like, I could look at the whole menu and cool, I could get 2 things. Awesome.
Right. Right.
Makes decision making easier. So yeah, I touch base on that. I have a whole vegan, vegetarian section.
Yeah. One of the things
just ways you could do it right.
Yeah, one of the things I like that you pointed out there is that, you know, one of the goals here is to eat, you know, less processed things. And if you're going completely plant-based and you're trying to get that protein in, you're going to basically have to break that rule. You're going to have to go more highly processed, which is, in the end, not really the aim.
Yeah.
All right. Nature differences change. Okay. You touched on this just a little bit. But here's a reasonable question as far as like what the week looks like before a tournament, and it's what are the major differences, if any, between eating healthy during a normal week as compared to the week leading up to the tournament and days before a tournament?
All right. So normal week, you're most likely training hard, so you'll need a bit more protein. The rule still applies though, balanced foods from the carbs, the fat, and protein. A week before the tournament, there are many schools of thought on like carb loading if you actually need it or is necessary. There's like a whole 7-day protocol where you gradually increase that carb intake. In my opinion, not completely necessary. You know, keep it simple. That week before, it's really the 1 to 3 days prior to the event are most crucial. So if you're still training hard, keep your intake the same and add a fistful of complex carbs. So your quinoa, your potato, your wild rice, things like that. If not, eat the same amount because you are not burning the same calories from training intensely. But if you eat the same, you're essentially carb loading because now it'll be excess carbs now because you're not, you know, exerting that. They'll be stored in the muscles. Days during the tournament, we touched on that, 30 minutes to 1 hour pregame. You know, that's again fast acting carbs, your liquids, your oranges, your honey, things like that.
Yep. There are a couple of questions in here that I think we actually touched on adequately during our main conversation, so I'm just going to skip some of those. Here's one that's, you know, referred to in your book actually. It's weekly meal prep recipe ideas. What simple snacks are good to eat right before and after a workout, and how long before and after? And the question kind of keeps going, but I think the more important part of the last part of the question is, what ideas do you have around eating to help like make sure that we're sleeping well, either during a tournament or just, you know, after a hard training day?
Yeah. So my book, we talk about 3 principles, right? Hydrate, fuel, recover. So we've been talking a lot about the fuel aspect. And as far as snacks, I go in depth about, I have a whole list of meal recipes. I give you options at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and then a whole array of snacks. So these snacks, I label some are better pre, some are better post-workout. Depending on your metabolism, we're talking pre-workout, 30 minutes to 1 hour seems, if you have a quick metabolism, probably 30 minutes. If you need a little more time, 1 hour. And again, these are snacks, not meals. Your meals are going to be more like 3 to 4 hours prior. So your snacks, we're thinking if you're an endurance athlete that can handle, you know, fat pretty good, your apple and peanut butter or banana and peanut butter option might be good. But I call them my FYP simple snack options. So this is before or after. Apple, orange, banana, watermelon, dates, raisins, honey, your simply orange juice, coconut water, things like that. What
Giving
else
you
is
an extra 60 seconds because of the sleep component of the question, which is like a totally separate question.
Right. Oh yeah. And then they asked about lifting versus running. Lifting, you're gonna want more carbs. Running, maybe a little more fat. Um, and then on the end, so pre-workout are going to be more the carbs. Post-workout is going to be more carb and protein mix. So maybe like a little jerky or non-fat Greek yogurt with some like granola, something like that. So with the sleep aspect, there's many schools of thought. I have a whole section on sleep and how you could sleep better. Everyone's going to have their hey, I swear by this rule. The way I address it, again, we're all individual, we're all unique. I have 12, top tips that you can test and see if they work for you. When it comes to diet, I'd say 1 to 2 hours prior to bedtime, no food. But if you're like me, I could never do that. I need food. But when I do have my food, I go more to fat sources because fat is going to be digesting the slowest. So, you don't want to have, a carb and you're like spiked up with energy and then trying to go to bed. So you want like something, maybe some nut butter, maybe some milk, avocado, something like that pre-bedtime to help you get a well-rested night of sleep before a competition.
Nice. I know for me, this is less rooted in science, but kind of to your point of, we're all individuals. I tend to sleep much better if I stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bedtime.
Yeah, sure.
I find myself to have a much more restful night of sleep. And then I usually actually extend that time of not eating until, maybe 10 a.m. or noon the next day.
Yeah, and again, and a lot of that is what I hit home on about sleep. Just having some kind of routine and ritual that tells your brain, hey, it's time to, parasympathetics, right? Rest and digest, time to wind it down. So whatever your routine is, that's what's going to help, get a good quality night of sleep.
Yeah. Actually, my general rule is really simple. It's like, don't eat much after like an hour of it becoming dark. And then I go to sleep when I'm tired.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Let's see. I like this one. How do you make good choices when you A, have 2 small children, and B, are not often the cook?
Yeah, so I'm guessing this is a husband or the dad.
Yeah.
I keep it simple, make it fun for the kids, let them get involved when choosing healthier options, but don't let them have the final say. Make it a collaborative effort. I have a tip, FYT, tips on the go would be great to utilize here, but have a discussion with the family and explain, first of all, hey, I'm trying to eat healthier. So, getting that message across, and if they're really, want to support you, I think they'll kind of meet you in the middle. And so you could tell the wife, like, hey, there's this cool recipe, like help out, help with the meal planning, take the stress off the wife and the kids. Maybe, while she wants to get home after work and wants to get dinner ready, maybe, hey, go take a bath and I'll like boil the potatoes, or get things started for the wife. And that might help accomplish that.
Nice.
I don't want to get in between husband and wife here, but I think it's just a discussion.
Right. Good. I think this one's like a classic one. The question is eating extremely vegetable dense inadvisable while training intensely because they're so low in calories? And this, I think this kind of goes back to even when bodybuilding became a big thing in the US. It's like, oh, well, we need to start trying to find these alternative sources of fuel and go into maybe some of these processed things or maybe products or supplements because, we can't get enough in if we're just like, doing hypertrophy all the time and trying to layer on muscle. It's hard to even just consume enough. Yeah. So what are your thoughts around quote unquote extremely vegetable dense and like its orientation around training?
Yeah. So the extreme vegetables, my first question is, why are we extreme vegetable eating? I'm assuming this is probably a plant-based vegan. So again, try to address why you're eating that way in the first place. For a lot of people, it might be a belief system, animal rights, which 100%, like if that is what you accomplish, by all means. But if it's purely just because you think it's healthier, I may advise to rethink. And it may be healthier for you. You might thrive off of that. I don't know. This is when supplementation would be good. But again, it's figuring out what works for your body. And, if you've been eating that way for a long time and thrive, maintain. But I will say protein supplementation will be needed because to help you recover from your training, you need a lot of calories. And calories, not just from protein, but protein's going to help with the recovery. And that's probably what you're going to miss out on eating lots of vegetables, but also fats. So increase the protein through supplementation is what I'd recommend for this veggie dense eater, as well as adding some fat to their diet to help with satiety. If they have the option, eat the animal-based protein. If not, supplementation and adding some fat with it. Is it advisable? I don't know. Do you thrive off of it? Have you been thriving off of it the past couple of years? Then it's fine. If you're trying something new, I'd probably say no.
Yeah, I think this is a good step for them to assess, right? Like take a glance, write down what you're actually eating and figure out what your calorie expenditure seems to be. Because, maybe this question could be oriented around being a vegetarian. It could be oriented around like, should I be eating more in the way of rice and quinoa or like potatoes because I've been trying to eat salads and asparagus to try to get my carbohydrates in.
Yeah, and I hit home on like variety, right? So you were just talking about it. Maybe you need to get more various other foods like your potatoes. I know I've mentioned it, but potato, quinoa, wild rice, as well as the cruciferous stuff. So your broccoli, your cauliflower, sulfur-rich veggies. We'll incorporate carrots, onions, mushrooms, things like that.
Nice. We had at least 2 people ask about intermittent fasting. And they've asked about it in a couple of different ways. One of the questions reads, some science behind intermittent fasting and how it's supposed to work is just the sentence. Carbs are also something that I've been confused about, often pointed to as something to cut back, whereas I come from a cultural background where I've grown up hearing that diets should be carb and vegetable heavy with less meat. So kind of a little bit all over the spectrum there with the structure of that question, but let's touch on intermittent fasting first, and let's see if you can do it in 60 seconds. Good luck.
Oh yeah. All right. So our bodies store a ton of fat and very few carbs. Fat is like our backup source. So when you fast, you're going to burn through your carbs, and you need your fat to create the energy via beta oxidation. So this creates a surplus of acetyl-CoA, which will really help with the endurance and aerobic activities. So then we create these ketones from our liver. Ketones promote positive changes in the structure of synapses, important for learning, memory, concentration, and overall brain health. In addition, intermittent fasting allows your digestive system to take a little break, leading to the ability to do a better job of conserving energy, restoring cells, and detoxing vital organs. And also a great tool for athletes who have poor glucose control, reaching for those sugary foods, elevated inflammation, and or negative relationship with food, because intermittent fasting doesn't have, you can't eat this, you can't eat that. It's just, you can't eat during this time period. So it's a little better on that. Dang, almost. Fasting is a great way to practice self-control and teach you how to manage your true hunger cues. I recommend it more as an experiment to figure out, again, that mindfulness aspect. There are many different fasting protocols. There's a 24-hour periodic fast. There's a once per week fast. And then you could do the most supported is a 16-8. It's pretty much where you only eat from noon to 8 o'clock. So it's based on preference. I think it's a good time. Regular fasting may help athletes have a lower body fat percentage while holding on to some muscle, especially if they still consume enough protein. But during season, I probably wouldn't mess with it unless you really get your nutrient timing correct for your competition. So loading up on the carbs before and after.
Yeah. So it seems like the perfect time to maybe experiment with that now, right?
Yeah. So I kind of mentioned, I did a post on it about the quarantine and the COVID versus like tracking your calories and figuring out, I need to eat less. Just skip a meal, skip a snack, go back to your old habits and see, hey, am I actually hungry during breakfast, lunch, dinner, or do I need that snack? Great time to utilize IF.
It is interesting. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, seems to be on like a time cycle. And so, Chris, I want him to chime in here in a moment too. I've been messing around with intermittent fasting now for the last year and a half, maybe 2 years.
Cool.
And I generally stop eating whenever it becomes dark out. And then I usually wait to eat until noon or maybe a little after. A lot of times, really, it's not so much, there's two ways of looking at it. It's either time restricted eating or intermittent fasting. They're kind of two sides of the same coin. I'm just trying to eat only in 8 hours or 10 hours maximum. I've heard of a lot of benefits over time, and some of it seems to be very research based, especially for endurance athletes. It's worked really well for me. But the thing that helped me get over the ghrelin issue in the morning was I first started to do some of these like fatty coffees where I had MCT oil in it, and it helped with satiety. And gradually it just eliminated that, like, oh, it's 8 a.m. Of course I'm hungry because it's 8 a.m. and shifted it to more being
out of habit.
Yeah.
So that whole mindfulness fuel scan that I like
hits home on a lot of that. My AirPods died.
Yeah. Microphone's great still.
Yeah. So anyway, basically, if you can utilize.
I think we lost you there for like the last 10 seconds.
Yeah,
My AirPods tried to connect again.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so basically, that mindfulness fuel scan, it talks about how you can tap into that those true hunger cues. So you may need to fast to really figure that out. You may not to. Everyone's different, and again, intermittent fasting I think really works for a lot of people because it's so simple.
Right.
Don't eat during this time, and then you realize, oh damn, like I'm not even hungry. As someone, all the research on intermittent fasting now is really from, I can't remember what Olympics, maybe a couple Olympics ago, there were some Muslim athletes that were fasting, and they were like, man, this probably isn't good for performance. Like, what's the deal? So they basically used them as test subjects, and then they found like all these like really cool things happening. And as a Muslim myself, and man, I got Ramadan coming up. So we do a dry fast where it's nothing in the mouth, no water, no nothing from sun up to sundown for 30 days. And fortunately for me, I think it's something good to, utilize or experiment with. We do it once a year for 30 days. And it's just a good experiment to, honestly, I get so much done during that week. You don't realize how much time you spend on food and how much you revolve around it, especially for performance. But you learn a lot, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah, one of the benefits that I found pretty immediately with this restricting my eating window to kind of noon until sunset has been how much energy I have in the morning. Whereas I used to eat breakfast and kind of have that lull leading up to lunch, eat lunch, and then you have that 2 p.m. lull. I have neither of those lulls now, which has been great for me, especially, working essentially 2 careers to stay a little sharper, not need a nap, not need downtime to keep going. Chris, you've been doing intermittent fasting or playing with it for years and years and years, right?
Yeah, I got turned on to it by, I don't remember who, probably reading some stuff from this nutritionist, Dr. Mike Rousseau. That was 11, I think we were talking about earlier, 11 years ago, I started playing with this. And the main reason was that I was already sort of doing it, because when you're a strength coach and you work in colleges, or even personal trainers, I'm more on the personal training side, like Abe and myself of recently, you can't really eat until like lunchtime, because you're probably up at 5 and you're in the weight room like very soon after, if you maybe have a chance to get a cup of coffee or a shake, but normally it's like no eating until about noon. And then you take a big lunch, and then you have to go to bed early because you got to wake up at 5 again. So my time frame had been sort of like that. And I had been trying to force myself to eat outside of that window because I thought I needed to. So I just stopped doing that for a while. And they're actually the times when I had the best body composition were when I was paying closer attention to that. But you know, there's so many different perspectives you can take biologically, and talking about like all these mechanistic things and the acetyl-CoA and the potential for like autophagy and managing endotoxin and things like that, but you can't really measure them. So it's a bit too far. There's too much of a gap in like what you can actually measure and what's going to happen. So the behavioral stuff that Abe was talking about is great, because it's like, people don't understand. They have a very bad relationship with food and hunger, and they don't understand the difference between psychological hunger and physiological hunger.
Yeah.
If you've had a fast for 48 hours, you understand the difference.
Yeah.
I've fasted for 72 hours once just so I could figure it out. By the end, I was hallucinating, but you have these intense moments of hunger pangs where your body and your stomach are telling you like, hey, if you don't eat something, you're going to die, but you're not. So like you can go, they've done studies with obese individuals where they literally did not eat anything but water and vitamins for 30 days or longer sometimes.
In Russia, they would do that a lot.
Yeah. And these people their bodies just have to adapt, and you have tremendous amount of energy stores. So it's like you feel hungry and your mood is hijacking you to trying to eat a candy bar. Just don't do it. Like drink water, think about it, something else. Figure out your relationship with food on a behavioral way so that you understand like how to control your environment and yourself. That's one of the hugest things that I think comes from that. And just realizing that like you can try this, but if it doesn't fit with your schedule, it's not going to work. So if you have a job where people like eat breakfast together and they have coffee breaks and, you know, go to water cooler and they go to lunch together, then you're in an environment where, like Abe was talking about, vegan diets, where you have to isolate yourself. And that's stress. Like you not being able to associate with your peers and have social aspects of your life is also going to add stress to your system. So try not to force a square peg into a round.
Uh-oh. No, we lost Chris for a moment.
Come back. He was on a roll.
Crushing it.
If you have a time,
square peg, round, and we almost got to the word hole.
Square peg, round hole.
Yeah.
Man, I forgot what I was talking
blacked
about.
Out. You blacked out.
I don't know about you, baby.
He blacked out. He was so into it.
No, I'm serious. I have no idea what I was saying. I said square peg, round hole. Yeah, I mean, I was just talking about the psychological. So when you talk about, you know, dynamic systems theories, Abe talked about environment being so important. It is like the organism, which is what everyone tries to focus on with health and nutrition, is so important. But the environment and the psychological aspects and the tasks you have to do throughout the day are also super important. So having a routine, being in the right mental headspace, and then surrounding yourself with success, like giving yourself an opportunity to be successful. It's certain things that people just have to pay attention to. And I believe that the reason why people have success when they change their behaviors to being more healthy is because they start focusing on other parts of their life to be healthy. So you make a decision with your willpower, which we have a lot of as human beings, to change your lifestyle to be more healthy by fixing your diet, let's say, and you're just going to eat more vegetables. But when you do that, it becomes easier to make these other decisions. You have this inertia that you've broken. You have this momentum. So all of a sudden going to bed at 10 p.m. or earlier is easy. All of a sudden waking up in the morning and drinking a glass of water is easy because you've just made this decision to do these things. So I feel like anytime that you make a conscious decision to try to redirect yourself, you're setting yourself up for success. So it's just such a dynamic thing. There's so many different factors that you could take into it, but it's like the mindset, and Abe has talked about this a lot. You having the right mindset and mindfulness and self-awareness is always going to be step one with any goal that you have.
Yeah. And then looking at everything as a whole, those are all great points. I literally on, I think like day 13, right after we talk about habit change, I get into the stress, right? And we think about stress as emotional stress, but I create this analogy of the threat or stress bucket that I stole from Z Health. And pretty much all day, every day, we're so wired to survive. That is number one. And that's that panic, right? Of when you haven't had food, your brain body's like, dude, what's going on? We need food. Like, what the heck? But then it learns and it gets over it. It's like, oh, I just burned through the carbs, but I created some energy from fat. Like, all right, we're good. We're good for a while. So understanding what affects stress. It's also your visual input. It's also your balance system, your vestibular input, your proprioceptive input from your joints and skin, how things feel. And then what we've been talking about, your interoceptive input, which regulates all of our internal awareness, your feelings like heart rate, body temperature, respiration, your visceral organs, and then digestion. So essentially what happens is if your stress as a whole from everything, emotion on top of all those things I just named, including digestion, we could significantly add to the stressor if we're eating a bunch of crap food. So if your bucket, or I'll grab my water bottle, if this begins filling up, that's when you see other things start to happen, like pain, decrease in performance, things like that. So it's all about decreasing the overall stress in this bucket. And one huge way we could do that is through hydrating, fueling, and recovering. Hence why I did this book versus training. I think it has a much more dramatic impact on the overall perspective.
Sorry, just one thing. I tell clients and athletes all the time that want to know about like how to get abs or how they're going to like have better body comp. They all want a training solution. And I tell them probably the number has gone up. I used to tell them like 75% is diet and nutrition and sleep. And now it's probably like 95%.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Training is like the icing on the cake, man. And like these,
I say 50 to 80% in the book.
Yeah. I keep stepping it up because if, abs are made in the kitchen. It's such a true thing. Like people are like want to crunch their way to having a six pack, but they still got like this 2-inch layer of fat surrounding it.
Yep.
It's in there. It's under there. I promise.
It's there.
I think this would be a good time, especially with that summary there at the end, Abe, to let people know that if they go to our members, if they go to www.3in1elite.com/FYP that's Fuel Your Performance GPP FYP.
Where do you get Fuel Your Performance? Because I guess it would have cost me $1,000. Anyway.
Yeah. But if they go there, they can find your book and they can get it with a small discount. I think we're doing you're offering 10% off between now and July or June. June
1st.
June
1st. We got an ebook or paperback. The ebook's cool because you could if you're there at the grocery store, you got it right there on your phone. You can type in, all your answers, all your assessments, things like that. But also the paperback's awesome too. It's really big, very as you were showing, there's lots of pictures and then you could write in it as well. So anyway, I think we hit home on a lot of stuff and it's all in there and more, a lot more.
Yeah. I mean, I've got both the paperback and the ebook. My preference is the ebook. It's got a lot of hyperlinks in there, so you can go check out some of the research that's mentioned. You can basically create printouts for these journals. So if you need more than one page, obviously you could do it with the paperback. You could just go copy the page, but you could just print as many as you would need from the ebook. I'm a big fan. Abe, I do want to thank you for spending what has now amounted to be nearly 2 hours with us.
I get why Joe Rogan his podcast 3 hours. Oh wow, that was
Yeah, we could go forever. That's the problem. Is like we haven't even talked about training really, and I don't think we've got.
I've been muted the most of the time.
I know. We could go a number of different directions on just nutrition, sleep, recovery, all these things. Which is what I
talked about. We talked about infrared clothing and ceramic clothing for like an hour and 25 minutes one time.
Yeah. I have some of those pajamas.
Great. I'm glad they were cheap.
They were. But I do thank you for spending some time with us. For everyone who is listening to this, most of whom I imagine are GPP members, one of the major reasons why this interview was important to me was because we've been getting questions about nutrition for a very, very long time. And while we offer these consultations and they can be very specific to people's very specific behaviors, it's really tough to find good resources with actionable steps, and also just widespread information on a number of different topics within the spectrum of nutrition. And you hit on almost all of them, which is crazy that you did that all within this one resource.
I literally tried to think of everything. So hopefully I covered everything. I'm sure there's something, but that's what version 2 is for, right?
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, that's the nice thing about this book is when you get it, you don't feel like there's something missing from it. You've got all the steps to address your behavior. And then you've got things that even talk about the freaking Mediterranean diet or any particular fad diet, or, just you go in every direction that our minds commonly go these days. And it's research backed. And I like that you are agnostic about a lot of these diets, that you're not, that you're like with the research, which research is constantly evolving. What research seems to indicate now will be overturned and then overturned again, and we'll start to get toward the truth later on. But yours is well supported, and you're not dogmatic about anything in the book.
Yeah, and that's why that assess yourself is so important, and why I have the reader do it every 30 days, or you could even do it every 2 weeks, because that's the proof is in the pudding, right? If you're feeling better, getting better, crushing your goals, that's what it's all about. Then we know something is working.
That's right. All right. And with that, we'll end it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. And, let me know if you have any other questions. And you can find me 3-in-1 Elite at 3-in-1 Elite Instagram, the Fuel Your Performance at Fuel Your Performance Instagram. And I try to post good stuff. I don't know.
You do. I even saw you washing your car and referring to it as neat.
Right.
That's solid. That's solid.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. Thanks again.
Yeah. Thank you.